If you've never done anything wrong, if you've prayed, trusted, and tried to walk faithfully with God, and life still fell apart anyway, then tonight this Bible story is for you. My name is Joanne. This is Sleep for the Anxious Soul, a quiet place where Scripture meets you in the dark and where you are never alone. I'll be walking with you through this story tonight. And now, as your breath begins to settle, as your body grows heavier against the mattress, as the room grows quieter around you, let your heart open gently to the story of Job. Not as a lesson and not as a warning, but as a companion for the night. A reminder that God is near to the brokenhearted and close to those who feel the weight of unanswered questions. Tonight, we walk slowly with Job. We're not rushing. We're not forcing the meaning. We're just going to let the story speak, the way Scripture often does in the quiet. Or take another slow, deep breath in. Hold it. Hold it. Hold it. And let it go. You are safe here. Now, before the storm ever came, Job lived a life marked by quiet devotion. He was known for his integrity, for his kindness, and for his reverence towards God, for the way he prayed over his children, offering sacrifices on their behalf, just in case their hearts had wandered. Job was steady. He was rooted. He was anchored. Maybe you know what that feels like, to do your best, to walk with God, to live with sincerity, and still face storms you never saw coming. Scripture describes Job as blameless, not perfect, not wholehearted. A man who feared God and turned away from evil. He lived with a kind of quiet devotion that didn't draw attention to itself. It simply flowed from who he was. And maybe, as you lie here tonight, you've tried to live that way too. Not perfectly, but sincerely, doing your best and loving God. Trying to walk in the light you've been given. And yet, life has been heavy. If that's you, you're not alone. Job's story begins in peace, but it does not stay there. And neither do ours. But God is faithful in every chapter. Scripture opens a window into a realm Job could not see. A conversation in heaven. A moment where God points to Job's faithfulness A moment where the enemy insists that Job only loves God because his life is easy. And God allows Job to be tested, not to harm him, not to reveal something deeper. The part of the story can feel unsettling. But remember this: Job was never out of God's sight, never out of God's reach, never outside God's care. So even in the unseen places, God was still holding the boundaries. And beloved, the same is true for you. There are things you cannot see, battles you don't even know about, conversations in heaven you will never hear. But you are not forgotten. You are not unprotected. You are not exposed to chaos. God holds the line around your life, even when you don't understand what is happening, even when the night feels long, even when the questions feel louder than the answers. God is still God, and He is still good. Before we move deeper into Job's story, let your shoulders soften, your jaw unclench. Let your breath fall into a slower, deeper rhythm. You don't have to hold everything together right now. You don't have to figure everything out. You don't have to be strong. Just breathe. Just rest. Just be here. Because God is near. And now, we step gently into the part of Job's story that aches. There came a day, ordinary at first, when messengers began to arrive, one after the other, each one carrying news that felt heavier than the last. A messenger came breathless, trembling, saying that raiders had stolen Job's oxen and donkeys and killed the servants tending them. Before that man could finish speaking, another arrived. Fire had fallen from the sky, consuming the sheep and the shepherds. Then another arrived. Raiders had taken the camels and killed more servants. And then the final messenger, the one whose voice must have cracked under the weight of the words he carried. The great wind had struck the house where Job's children were feasting. The house had collapsed, and none had survived. In a single shattering moment, Job's word fell apart. His wealth, his livelihood, his legacy, his children, the ones he prayed for, the ones he loved, the ones he covered with sacrifice and intercession, gone. And beloved, maybe you know what it feels like when life changes in a moment. When the phone rings, when the diagnosis comes, when the relationship breaks, or when the job ends. When the loss hits so suddenly, you can barely breathe. Job's story meets you there. Not to compare pain, but to remind you that God sees the places where your heart has been torn. And sweet friend, if this part of Job's story touches something tender in you, if you've been carrying your own losses quietly, if you've been walking through your nights alone, if you've been holding more than anyone knows, I want you to know something gently. You don't have to carry it alone. There's a small, peaceful family I send soft nighttime prayers to, gentle reminders of God's love, little whispers of comfort for hearts that feel the weight of the dark. If your nights have felt long, if your heart is heavy, you are invited to join us. The link will be below whenever you're ready, and you're always welcome among us. You always have been. Scripture that says that when Job heard the news, he tore his robe, a sign of deep grief, and fell to the ground. But he didn't fall in despair. He fell in worship. Not the triumphant kind or not the joyful kind, not the kind that raised hands in loud praise. This was a worship of a broken man. A man who had nothing left to offer but his trust. And he whispered words that have echoed through centuries. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. He didn't say it because he understood. He said it because he felt strong. He didn't say it because he wasn't hurting. He said it because even in the ashes, he believed that God was still worthy. Now, beloved, maybe you've whispered something like that too. Not because you understood or not because it was easy, but because something in you still believed God was near. That kind of faith is precious to God. It's tender. It's fragile. It's real. But Job's suffering wasn't over. Scripture says that the enemy struck Job with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. He sat among the ashes, the place of mourning, scraping his skin with a piece of broken pottery. His body hurt. His heart hurt. His world was unrecognizable. And maybe you know what it is to hurt in your body, in your mind, in your spirit, in ways that feel too deep to explain. Job's wife, overwhelmed by grief herself, cried out, "Do you still hold on to your integrity? Curse God and die." But Job answered gently, "Shall we accept good from God and not also accept hardship?" He wasn't dismissing the pain. He wasn't minimizing the loss. He was simply holding on to the truth that God had not changed, even though everything else had. Let these words settle over you like a warm blanket. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. When you pass through deep waters, I will be with you. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. You are not passing through this night alone. God is with you in every breath. When Job's friends heard what had happened, they came to him. And when they saw him from a distance, they barely recognized him. His grief had changed him. His suffering had marked him. So they did something sacred, something rare, something deeply compassionate. They sat with him on the ground in silence for 7 days and 7 nights. No advice, no explanations, no pressure to be strong. Just presence. Sometimes the holiest thing we can offer someone is simply to sit with them in their pain. And beloved, God sits with you in yours. Not rushing you, not lecturing you, not demanding answers, but just being near with you. After 7 days of silence, 7 days of sitting in ashes, 7 days of holding grief in his body, Job finally opened his mouth. And what came out was not polished, nor pretty. Not the kind of prayer we recite in church, but it was raw and honest. Unfiltered. Job cursed the day he was born. He cried out in confusion. He asked, "Why, Lord?" He asked, "How long, Lord?" He asked where God was. And beloved, this is important. God did not rebuke him for it. Not once. Job's lament was not a sign of weak faith. It was a sign of real faith. The kind that brings its questions to God instead of running from him. Maybe you've had nights like that. Nights where the tears come before the words. Nights where you whisper, "God, I don't understand." Nights where your heart aches with questions you're afraid to say out loud. Job shows us that God can handle every one of them. Your honesty does not scare him. Your questions do not offend him. Your tears do not push him away. He is the God who meets you in the ashes, and he listens. As you lie here tonight, if there are things you've been holding inside, things you haven't even known how to say, things you've been afraid to bring to God, you can let them rise now. Not to fix them, not to solve them, just to release them, to give them to God. God is not asking you to be composed. He is only asking you to be real. Let your breath soften. Let your chest loosen. Let your heart speak in its own quiet way. You are safe with him. Job's lament opened the door to a long, painful wrestling. His friends, the same ones who sat with him in silence, eventually began to speak. And their words, though well-intentioned, were heavy. They insisted Job must have done something wrong, that suffering only comes to the guilty, and that God must be punishing him. But Job knew his heart. He knew he had walked with integrity. He knew this suffering wasn't the result of hidden sin. And so he wrestled with his friends and with his thoughts, even with his understanding of God. And maybe you know that feeling too, when the explanations people offer don't match the ache inside you, when the answers feel too small for the pain you carry, when the old ways of understanding God don't seem to fit the season you're in. Job's story gives you permission to wrestle, to question, to sit in the tension without rushing to resolve it. Faith is not the absence of questions. Faith is bringing your questions to God. Let these words settle gently over your heart. God is near to all who call on him in truth. Pour out your heart before him. God is your refuge. When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. Powerful words. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to hide. You don't have to be strong. God meets you in the wrestling. In the middle of his wrestling, Job said something remarkable. He said, I know that my Redeemer lives. Even when he couldn't feel God, even when he couldn't see God, even when his prayers felt like they were hitting the ceiling, something in him still believed. Not in explanations, not in outcomes, not in understanding, but in God himself. And beloved, maybe that's where you are tonight. Not with clarity, not with answers, not with certainty, with a small flickering hope that God is still who he says he is. That hope is holy. That hope is precious. And that hope is enough. Inhale slowly. And exhale gently. Let the peace of God settle over you like a warm blanket. Let his nearness wrap around your heart. And let his presence steady your breath. You are held. You are seen. And you are safe. After all the lament, after all the wrestling, after all the questions that seemed to echo into silence, God spoke. Not in anger, not in disappointment, not in rebuke, but in a whirlwind, a symbol not of chaos, but of presence, God's presence, a presence powerful enough to steady the trembling heart, a presence gentle enough to meet a broken man in the ashes. And the first thing God did was not to explain. He didn't say, here's why this happened. He didn't say, let me justify myself. He didn't say, let me give you all the answers. Instead, he drew Job's eyes back to who he is. Because sometimes the comfort we need is not an explanation, but a revelation. I can say that again. Because sometimes the comfort we need is not an explanation, but a revelation. God asked Job questions, not to shame him, but to lift his gaze. Where were you when the foundations of the earth were laid? Have you commanded the morning? Do you hold the storehouses of snow? Can you loosen the cords of the stars? These were not accusations. They were invitations. Invitations to remember. You are not alone. You are not abandoned. You are not at the hand of mercy, of chaos. You are held by the one who holds everything together. And beloved, sometimes the most healing thing God can do is remind you of his greatness. In the very moment you feel the smallest, not to make you feel insignificant, but to make you feel secure. Because if the God who commands the morning is the same God who holds your heart, you are safe. As you lie here, with your breath, with your body softening, with your spirit settling, let this truth rest over you. You do not need all the answers to rest in God's arms. You do not need clarity to be held by his peace. You do not need understanding to be surrounded by his love. God is not asking you to solve anything tonight. He is asking you to rest. To rest in his strength. To rest in his nearness. Rest in his unchanging character. To just breathe and let your heart lean into him. In his response to Job, God spoke the stars, the oceans, the boundaries of light and darkness. But he also spoke small things, creatures hidden in the wilderness, animals that gave birth in secret places, birds that soar on wings no human can even trace. Why? To show Job and to show you that nothing is overlooked. Not the vast, not the tiny, not the seen, not the hidden. If God watches over the mountain goat, giving birth in a place no human will ever witness, he watches over you. If God knows when a raven cries out for food, he knows when your heart cries out in the night. If God sees the path of lightning and the way of the eagle, he sees the path you cannot yet understand. You are not unseen. You are not forgotten. You are not lost. You are held by the God who holds all things. Let these words rest gently over your heart. Be still and know that I am God. My thoughts are higher than your thoughts. The eternal God is your refuge. You don't have to understand everything to be held by the one who understands all things. As Job spoke, Job's heart began to soften. Not because he suddenly understood his suffering, because he remembered who God is. Job said, I spoke of things too wonderful for me to know. It wasn't a confession of guilt. It was a confession of awe, a recognition that God's wisdom is deeper than our pain. His presence is stronger than our questions. And His love is wider than our understanding. And beloved, maybe tonight is your moment of softening too. Not a moment of giving up. Not a moment of pretending everything is okay, but a moment of letting God be God. A moment of letting your heart rest in the one who holds all things together. Take a slow inhale and let it fall gently. Let your shoulders release. Let your mind loosen its grip. Let your heart settle into the quiet. You are safe. You are loved. And you are held. When God speaks peace over the storm, He's not finished speaking. And after the whirlwind quieted, after Job's heart softened in surrender, something shifted. Not in Job's circumstances, not yet, but in Job's spirit. The storm outside him had not changed, yet the storm inside him had begun to settle. And beloved, that is the first miracle God gives us. Not the change of circumstances, but the change of heart, the quieting of fear, the softening of anxiety, the gentle reminder that we are not alone. Job didn't receive answers. He received presence, and presence is enough. Then something beautiful happened. God asked Job to pray for the very friends who had misunderstood him, accused him, and added weight to his suffering. And Job did, not out of obligation, not out of bitterness, but out of a heart that had been tenderized by God's nearness. There is something healing about praying for those who have wounded us, not because they were right, but because God is gentle with us and teaches us to be gentle with others. Job's prayer came the doorway to the next chapter of his life. And beloved, sometimes healing begins when we release others into God's hands and let Him be the one who restores. Scripture says that after Job prayed for his friends, God restored him. Not partially, not reluctantly, not sparingly, but fully, tenderly, generously. God gave Job twice as much as he had before. His relationships were renewed. His home was rebuilt. His joy was restored. But the restoration wasn't just material. It was spiritual, emotional, and relational. Job came out of the storm with a deeper understanding of God, a softer heart, and a faith refined in the fire. And beloved, this is the hope woven into your night. God writes the final chapter. Not suffering, not loss, not fear, not the storm. God. Sweet friend, if this part of Job's story stirs something in you, if you feel God gently rebuilding places in your heart, if you sense Him restoring things you thought were gone, I want to offer you something gently. There is a small, peaceful space where I have gathered more for you. Their prayers, their scriptures, gentle guides for your walk with God, resources to help you grow, heal, and rest in Him. It is our PayHip store, and the link is below whenever your heart is ready. There's no pressure and no rush. It's just a quiet offering for the journey God is walking with you. And as you lie here tonight, with your breathing slowly, with your body softening, with your spirit settling, let this truth rest over you. Your story is not over. Your night is not the end. Your pain is not the final word. God is still writing. God is still working. God is still restoring. Even when you cannot see it, even when you cannot feel it, even when you cannot imagine how. He is the God of resurrection, the God of renewal, the God of restoration, and He is holding your story with the same tenderness He held Job's. Let your breath deepen, slowly, softly. Let your shoulders release. Let your jaw unclench. Let your hands rest loosely by your side. You don't have to hold anything right now. You don't have to solve anything. You don't have to understand anything. Just rest. Rest in the God who restores. Rest in the God who stays. Rest in the God who speaks peace over storms. Rest in the God who holds you the way He held Job. You are safe. You are loved. And you are held. And now, my dear friend, may the Lord surround you with His peace, be present with you in every place of fear, and lead you gently into deep and restful sleep. May you rest knowing that you are never alone, and that God is with you, even in the places that feel uncertain. And now, with a tender kiss of comfort, your reminder that you are safe, loved, and held. I send you into his care. But before we part tonight, if your body is still holding tension, even after rushing in a story, I want you to know I've left something gentle for you in the description below. It is a cervical pillow that has made my own nights so much kinder. It cradles the curve of your neck and allows your body to finally soften into rest. I know it's a small thing, but sometimes the smallest things can be the biggest things. You'll find the link below whenever you're ready. Sleep well, beloved. God is watching over you. Kiss goodnight.